it is a show, it's a symbolic ceremony and it's a show, was Amanda.
I know. Wasn't that
Oh my God, I just love that girl.
the best thing on stage the whole day was that
The
poet.
whole day. She totally blew me away, and
Fabulous.
I hope I live long enough to vote for her for president.
Right?
I just admired her mind so
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
out of a 22-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also she's really adorable. I mean, she's just gorgeous. And she, she has the whole movement thing and rhythm with her poetry. I mean, she has the whole package.
Yeah.
I was just so blown away by her. I just
know.
totally
Me
loved
too.
her.
That's right. It was physical for her, the way she was like dancing with her arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of, I saw her being interviewed the night before last, and she had a speech impediment. And these hand gestures are part of her recovery, her learning how to not do that. It's part of her thing. So not only is it a natural rhythm to what she's speaking, but it's part of her learning how to get over that thing. And that's, as I understand it, a hard thing to overcome.
Right. She had a speech impediment like Biden had a speech impediment, and like Daniel had a speech impediment. When he's talking and he's not reciting poetry, he stutters. Daniel Dinsky. And apparently, I didn't know this until later, but I don't know if you all remember when they did the debates between Trump and Biden. I noticed that Trump kept interrupting Biden like a lot. Oh, wow. And I later found out that he was doing that intentionally, because one of the ways you can get somebody to start stuttering who is a stutterer is to interrupt them when they're talking.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But I was talking to someone, and I've confirmed this now through some discussions with people who have stuttering, who are friends of mine, that people who stutter are dealing with father issues. And I have actually asked my friends who are stuttering, can you confirm this or didn't? And they were all just like, oh yeah, that's true. Really? So yes, and if you watch Bridgerton, that TV series that Netflix is doing, that Shonda Rhimes is the producer of. Yeah, it's pretty fabulous. At first, I thought it was just Sex in the City, but in England. But then I watched it, and I was like, oh no, there's a lot of depth to this.
I couldn't get past I watched it for 10 minutes and went, yeah.
I did the same thing, and then people kept saying, give it a chance because you're going to love it, and said that's what happened. But that is what happens with the Duke, who is the gorgeous Black man who's like the main character. He is a child whose father rejects him, and he stutters terribly, and then finally overcomes it. It's a really interesting thing, and I'm so grateful to all the speech therapists who have helped leaders around the world. King George
the Sixth had it. Yeah,
and
that was a good movie. Did you see the movie?
Yes.
Yeah, it was well done.
Yeah, and that fabulous,
that was a great movie. It was really a sweet movie.
It's a sweet movie. Yeah, yeah. So, does that sound good, y'all? Would y'all like to do that to, maybe just listen to the 6 inaugural poets?
Okay.
Okay.
You got them ready? I mean, I'm not voting against it. I think I heard 3 or 4 of them today, but if I get to hear Amanda again, I'd love it. I'd love it.
So here is the very first poet laureate, who was Robert Frost. And I found his, these are some images of him, and I found his inaugural address, but he was so old. I think he must have had Parkinson's. He was so old when he read his work that it was almost, you almost couldn't, it was just, I'm not going to play it because it was so bad. So I'm just going to read his poem instead, and we may have to read it twice because it's one of those kinds of poems that I found hard to follow. And it's called The Gift Outright, which he wrote for this. The land was ours before we were the land's. She was our land more than 100 years before we were her people. She was ours in Massachusetts and Virginia, but we were England's, still colonials, possessing what we still were unpossessed by, possessed by what we now no more possess, something we were withholding that made us weak, until we found out that it was ourselves we were withholding from our land, and forthwith found salvation in surrender to her. Such as we were, we gave ourselves outright. The deed of the gift was many deeds of war. Such as we were, we gave ourselves outright to the land, vaguely realizing westward, but still unstoried, artless, unenhanced, such as she was, such as she will become. Wow. I was like, hey, wow. That poem would not be read today at an inaugural speech, I can tell you that.
Mhm.
Because it totally bypasses the fact that Native people lived here and that they were storied and that they did have art and that they did enhance landscapes. It totally bypasses Native people, among other things.
Well, I think at that time, there was no education at all in the white world about the Native Americans. So there was just total ignorance of.
I think you're right. Yeah,
Did he write that specifically for the inauguration?
he did. And John F. Kennedy was the first president to begin the tradition of having an inaugural poet.
So what year did he read that?
1961, I believe.
Mhm.
But it comes to Elena. Elena, you saying that people were not attentive to the Native peoples, the first Americans who were here.
Yes.
They wasn't taught in the schools, the attitude. Yeah, there was complete ignorance about it. They were just something that was there before, and we conquered them, and that was an accepted way of thinking about it.
Yes.
What I'm remembering is that when I was in 5th grade, we studied our local Native peoples.
That's because you had an exceptional 5th grade teacher.
Well,
That was not the norm at all.
The Lenape Indians, and we
That
did a
was
big
not the
report
norm.
on them.
Most people don't realize this, but up until 1979, Native people were not free to practice their faith.
Mm-hmm.
An FBI agent could, and this did happen hundreds of times, FBI, CIA, government agents were allowed to go into a Native American church, a Sundance, a sweat lodge, a Yuwipi ceremony, didn't matter what kind of ceremony it was. They were allowed to go uninvited into that ceremony and destroy all of the sacred objects of that ceremony and imprison the elders for holding the ceremony at all until 1979. And the reason it got changed in 1979 is that President Carter the law called the Freedom of Information Act. And that was when attached to the Freedom of Information Act was the Native American religious law. Jimmy Carter did that. Who was a Baptist, who was a strict Baptist, did that.
He still is.
That is a beautiful testimony to diversity and still believing in your faith. And so I'm friends with Jimmy Carter's personal assistant. Her name's Rita, and I gave her my signed copy of Daniel Ladinsky's Hafez when she and I met, where I was teaching poetry in Canada. She and I became very close friends. And she told me that President Carter in his 80s left the Baptist church, and had been a cradle Baptist person, Southern Baptist, because Southern Baptist it's a unique wing of the Baptist faith, the Southern Baptist.
Yeah, I know.
He left the Southern Baptist Church and he went to a progressive Baptist church in Plains, Georgia, because of the way that traditional Baptists were treating women. He did not want to support it.
Yeah, I think I've
I
heard
was so
that.
proud of him.
I think I've heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember being in grade school, Diana.
Yeah.
I was in Oklahoma, living in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so we talked about the Indian tribes, all of which, ended up out there in the middle of the flatland desert, because that's where we plopped them, because nobody else wanted that land
Right.
until they discovered oil. But we did talk about them in the 50s in grade school.
Here's an interesting
But
fact.
it wasn't like, the details or the value of their culture or anything.
Right.
But they were all around us, and they were in school with us and
Right.
like that. But
they were acknowledged through the study. I mean,
they were acknowledged in Oklahoma. You couldn't not acknowledge them because they were all around you. But
Yeah.
but they were living on those reservations still in the 50s.
The last time a president did not attend the inauguration of his predecessor, besides Donald Trump, was Andrew Jackson.
Right.
Andrew Jackson was personally responsible for the Trail of Tears. Congress voted against the Trail of Tears as an inhuman act. And Andrew Jackson said, I am in charge of the military, try and stop me. And he personally enacted the Trail of Tears that Baba tried to mitigate the karma of by having Elizabeth Patterson, drive the path, which is basically Highway 40 from Tennessee to Oklahoma. And, obviously he did that intentionally because he kept saying to her, drive faster, drive faster, drive faster. And that's when they had the accident.
Well, yeah, the accident, he wanted the accident to happen right there, first of all, in the very middle, the center of the country, and on the Trail of Tears. Yes.
Yeah, most people ended up in Oklahoma, like you said, Elaine, when they were rounded up from the southeast, because that's where the Trail of Tears happened, right? It happened in the southeast. They actually met in Tennessee. They rounded people up in Tennessee, and they walked them in through the middle of winter.
I know. Yeah. That movie, Dances with
Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Wolves had such an impact on me.
Me too. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, shall we go to the next poet? Any questions about Robert Frost?
Nope.
So yeah, I thought that the Bushes had an inaugural poet, but they did not. So the next inaugural poet was Bill Clinton, who had Maya Angelou read for him, and I'm sure all of you know something about her, but she passed on recently. She was from North Carolina and died here in North Carolina, and she was teaching at Wake Forest. She has won several huge awards for her work, but the thing she's most known for is not her poetry, but her 7 autobiographies about her life. The first one is called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And if you are looking for a book to read, wow, I cannot recommend that book more highly. It is a stunning autobiography. And basically it's a story of how she grew up just dirt poor, and she lived with her mother and with her brother, and her mother's boyfriend, when Maya Angelou was 8 years old, raped her. And she told her uncles about it. At that time, nobody cared. If you were a Black person and you had been raped, nobody cared. So they put him in jail and they let him out the next day. No bail, no nothing. He wasn't even going to go, wasn't even going to be tried for raping a young girl at that year. He was probably back in the 40s or 50s. And her uncles murdered him to enact some justice, because they saw that no justice would be enacted and that man would be back in that house. And Maya Angelou, as an 8-year-old child's mind, cannot understand what was happening. She stopped speaking for the next 5 years. She felt that her voice killed a man. And so she stopped speaking for 5 years and would literally sit under her house and read to herself and not leave the house. And it was a woman, a teacher, who later took her under her wing and got her to start speaking again. But she credits being a poet with those 5 years of not speaking.
Well, can we read her poem?
Yes, we can actually hear her read it herself.
Good.
Where did I put it? I stacked all these up, and let me grab it up for you. Somehow it went away. Let me pull it up.
I never met her, but she was reading something that she had written at an event that I went to, and I was so far back in the room. It was in this big room in downtown Manhattan, and I could hardly hear what was going on. So I've been in New York with her, that's all. Could barely see her, but that was in the 60s.
All right, let me see if I can get onto screen share.
And Americans everywhere. A rock, a river, a tree. Host.
We're going to start at the beginning.
Mr. President and Mrs. Clinton, Mr. Vice President and Mrs. Gore, and Americans everywhere. A rock, a river, a tree, hosts to species long since departed, marked the mastodon, the dinosaur, who left dry tokens of their sojourn here on our planet floor. Any broad alarm of their hastening doom is lost in the gloom of dust and ages. But today, the rock cries out to us, clearly, forcefully, come, you may stand upon my back and face your distant destiny, but seek no haven in my shadow. I will give you no hiding place down here. You, created only a little lower than the angels, have crouched too long in the bruising darkness, have lain too long face down in ignorance, your mouths spilling words armed for slaughter. The rock cries out to us today, you may stand upon me, but do not hide your face. Across the wall of the world, a river sings a beautiful song. It says, come, rest here by my side. Each of you, a bordered country, delicate and strangely made, proud, yet thrusting perpetually under siege. Your armed struggles for profit have left collars of waste upon my shore, currents of debris upon my breast. Yet today, I call you to my riverside, if you will study war no more. Come, clad in peace, and I will sing the songs the Creator gave to me when I and the tree and the rock were one. Before cynicism was a bloody sear across your brow, and when you yet knew, you still knew nothing. The river sang and sings on. There is a true yearning to respond to the singing river and the wise rock. So say the Asian, the Hispanic, the Jew, the African, the Native American, the Sioux, the Catholic, the Muslim, the French, the Greek, the Irish, the rabbi, the priest, the sheik, the gay, the straight, the preacher, the privileged, the homeless, the teacher. They all hear the speaking of the tree. They hear the first and last of every tree speak to humankind today. Come to me here beside the river. Plant yourself beside the river. Each of you, descendant of some passed on traveler, has been paid for. You who gave me my first name, you Pawnee, Apache, Seneca, you Cherokee Nation, who rested with me, then forced on bloody feet, left me to the employment of other seekers, desperate for gain, starving for gold. You, the Turk, the Arab, the Swede, the German, the Eskimo, the Scot, you, the Ashanti, the Yoruba, the crew, bought, sold, stolen, arriving on a nightmare, praying for a dream. Here, root yourselves beside me. I am that tree planted by the river, which will not be moved. I, the rock, I, the river, I, the tree, I am yours. Your passages have been paid. Lift up your faces. You have a piercing need for this bright morning dawning for you. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the shape of your most private need. Sculpt it into the image of your most public self. Lift up your heart. Each new hour holds new chances for new beginnings. Do not be wedded forever to fear, yoked eternally to brutishness. The horizon leans forward, offering you space to place new steps of change. Here, on the pulse of this fine day, you may have the courage to look up and out and upon me, the rock, the river, the tree, your country. No less to Midas than the mendicant, no less to you now than the mastodon then. Here, on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning.
Did that screen share?
Were we supposed to have an image of her? Reading?
Oh, I was trying to screen share that for you so you could see her performing that. I'm sorry that it didn't come through. I think the rest of them, I will make sure the rest of them come through.
Yeah.
Wasn't that fabulous?
Yeah. Elaine, you're
my
muted.
gosh.
Yeah.
Incredible. Wow.
I had a coughing attack, so I muted myself.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yes, it was really incredible.
I don't remember a word from it, but I know I've heard it before.
Yeah.
I watched. Yeah, I've seen Kennedy's inauguration. That was the beautiful thing.
I think that was the first time I ever heard the name Mount Maya Angelou. And then read her book afterwards.
Yeah.
If there's no comments, I'll carry on to the second inaugural poet for the Clintons, Richard Blanco, who we will actually watch him read. And to say a little bit about him, since he's not quite as well known, he was born in 1968. He's not just a poet; he's a civil engineer, and he was Barack Obama's poet.
Yeah, if he was born in 68,
he was Barack Obama's
Kennedy's poet. Yeah,
he was the first immigrant Latino openly gay person to read, to be the first as the U.S. inaugural poet. He taught at Georgetown University and at several other schools. And his goal was to teach to demystify poetry, teaching it to grade schools, nursing homes, and prisons. I really appreciate that because so many people think of poetry as being so highbrow that they don't feel that they can even begin to understand it, which of course is not true at all. But it's an idea we have in the United States about poetry, I think.
Who was the inaugural poet for Clinton's second inauguration?
We are going to hear that person. I had these stacked up and it got moved when I was looking for. We'll go back to that person. So this is Richard Blanco inaugural reading.
Almost first.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to try to.
Sown by sweat.
I'm going to try and
Hands.
hopefully I can do
Our
this.
distinguished guest is the poet Richard Blanco, who will share with us words he has composed for this occasion.
There's my senator. He's been around forever. He's now the Speaker of the House. Woo!
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, America, one today. One sun rose on us today, kindled over our shores, peeking over the Smokies, greeting the faces of the Great Lakes, spreading a simple truth across the Great Plains, then charging across the Rockies. One light, waking up rooftops, under each one a story, told by our silent gestures moving across windows. My face, your face, millions of faces in morning's mirrors, each one yawning to life, crescendoing into our day. The pencil yellow school buses, the rhythm of traffic lights, fruit stands, apples, limes, and oranges, arrayed like rainbows, begging our praise. Silver trucks, heavy with oil or paper, bricks or milk, teeming over highways alongside us, on our way to clean tables, read ledgers, or save lives, to teach geometry or ring up groceries, as my mother did for 20 years, so I could write this poem for all of us today. All of us, as vital as the one light we move through, the same light on blackboards with lessons for the day, equations to solve, history to question, or atoms imagined, the I have a dream we all keep dreaming, or the impossible vocabulary of sorrow that won't explain the empty desks of 20 children marked absent today and forever. Many prayers, but one light, breathing color into stained glass windows, life into the faces of bronze statues, warmth onto the steps of our museums and park benches as mothers watch children slide into the day. One ground, our ground, rooting us to every stalk of corn, every head of wheat sown by sweat and hands, hands gleaning coal or planting windmills in deserts and hilltops that keep us warm, hands digging trenches, routing pipes and cables, hands as worn as my father's, cutting sugarcane so my brother and I could have books and shoes. The dust of farms and deserts, cities and plains, mingled by one wind, our breath. Breathe. Hear it through the day's gorgeous din of honking cabs, buses launching down avenues, the symphony of footsteps, guitars, and screeching subways, the unexpected songbird on your clothesline. Hear squeaky playground swings, trains whistling, or whispers across cafe tables. Hear the doors we open each day for each other, saying, hello, shalom, buongiorno, howdy, namaste, or buenos dias, in the language my mother taught me, in every language, spoken into one wind, carrying our lives without prejudice, as these words break from my lips. One sky, since the Appalachians and Sierras claimed their majesty, and the Mississippi and Colorado worked their way to the sea. Thank the work of our hands, weaving steel into bridges, finishing one more report for the boss on time, stitching another wound or uniform, the first brushstroke on a portrait, or the last floor on the Freedom Tower, jutting into the sky that yields to our resilience. One sky, toward which we sometimes lift our eyes, tired from work, some days guessing at the weather of our lives, some days giving thanks for a love that loves you back, sometimes praising a mother who knew how to give, or forgiving a father who couldn't give what you wanted. We head home through the gloss of rain or weight of snow, or the plum blush of dusk, but always, always home, always under one sky, our sky, and always one moon, like a silent drum tapping on every rooftop and every window of one country, all of us facing the stars. Hope, a new constellation, waiting for us to map it, waiting for us to name it together.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of ideas packed into that.
Yeah, you did. I've lost my YouTube thing, so hopefully it doesn't come back up. I'm going to move to Elizabeth. Does anyone have anything to say before? Okay, that's what I did not want to have happen. Back on. Let's see if I can.
Mr. President and Mrs. Clinton, Mr. Vice President and Mrs. Goa, and Americans everywhere.
I have so many things open that I can't find it.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me look for it. I'll find it.
Okay.
I'll find it.
Departed, marked the mastodon, the dinosaur, who left dry tokens of their sojourn here on our planet floor. Any broad alarm of their hastening doom is lost in the gloom of dust and ages. But today, the rock cries out to us, clearly, forcefully, come, you may stand upon my back and face your distant destiny, but seek no haven in my shadow. I will give you no hiding place down here. You, created only a little more than the
I
angels,
can't find it.
too long.
Oh, I know. I can probably just, well, if I do that, there it is. I see.
Face down in ignorance. Your mouth filling words, armed for slaughter.
All right. Took me a second to figure out how to find that on my desktop. Does anyone have any comment to make before we move to the next person? I think what I noticed about it is that he commented that, that there had been 20 children that had been slaughtered in their schoolrooms. And, we don't even talk about that anymore because now it's just the norm. That was really what got my attention about that poem. Is how every day that has become for us.
Right. This country gets so inured to these repeated atrocities.
Yeah. Which may get worse before it gets better. I think we all realize after the Capitol riots that may start. That may be the beginning of something else.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
We will see for sure.
We will see for sure.
What Baba has in mind.
What?
What Baba has in mind.
Yeah, and what human beings are capable of.
And what you're saying makes me think, is that one reason why some people don't have compassion for the people from Mexico and Central America who are escaping that and coming here because it's better here than there?
I think they don't have compassion because they don't have compassion for anyone that's not them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. That part of society.
In India, right? That's why.
I'm sorry, what?
That happened in India, right? That's why Mahatma Gandhi was murdered. He had too much compassion for people who weren't him. It was his own people who, essentially said, "You're too." The whole thing between Muslims and Hindus, it happens all over the world. People don't like someone who's not them.
Yeah, somebody that looks different or
has a different religion,
or believes in something,
right?
That for some weird reason threatens you.
Right.
There has to be a threat in there for that kind of hate, which is what we're experiencing in America. Why do these people feel so threatened?
Right. I guess. I'm sorry, Elena. That's the second time. I apologize.
I just said it's very sad. That's all.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I guess I'll know that one of our own board of directors was at the riots. And
no.
I don't, Dennis Walterding.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to Angela about it, and I said, "Do you think this is an opportunity to have a discussion among the board of directors? Do you think you should step down from the leadership position?" And I guess what I'm noticing, and from looking at the people who have been arrested, is how many of them had mental illness. Not all of them had mental illness, but several of the people who they've been highlighting that have been arrested have some form of mental illness or are drug addicted. And I just noticed that for whatever it's worth. These are people who are easily manipulated, have trouble thinking things through, cannot distinguish reality from lies.
Right, and can be easily led by.
Right. Right. Yeah.
People that are not good.
Right.
Power mad.
Right.
Well.
So it comes to our own shores.
Yes.
So it's one of the reasons I love poetry so much. I think poetry really tries to grapple itself with those kinds of things and realizing there's really no easy answer. So unless someone wants to add something to that conversation, I will move on to Elizabeth Alexander, who was the original poet for the Clintons. She was born in 1962. I thought her poetry was fabulous. Sorry, she was about for Obama. She was a professor at Yale, where she taught both poetry and the African American studies. She went on to teach at Columbia and taught in the Department of Comparative Literature. She's from New York, grew up in DC. Her father was the Secretary of the Army of the Equal Employment Opportunity, and her mother was the professor of African American history at George Washington. And her brother served on Barack Obama's presidential campaign, and she basically said that, I'm quoting from her page here, that politics was in the drinking water at my house. So she grew up feeling a sense of need to be politically active just so she could make the world a better place. And she ended up going to Georgetown because her favorite poet, Colin Waldecott, was there. His poem I'm going to read because it's so fabulous to give you some idea of who her teacher was. We've read this poem before on this series, but I'm going to read it again because it's such a fabulous poem. He was from the Caribbean and was a Pulitzer Prize winning poet. And the name of this poem is Love After Love. So this is a poem from her teacher. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. Love that poem. So we are going to hear her read her poem. Hopefully I can screen share this. I seem to be.
And this is her inaugural poem for?
Yes.
For whom?
For Barack Obama.
Okay.
I have the distinct pleasure of introducing an American poet, Elizabeth Alexander. Praise Song for the Day. Each day we go about our business, walking past each other, catching each other's eyes or not, about to speak or speaking. All about us is noise. All about us is noise and bramble, thorn and din, each one of our ancestors on our tongues. Someone is stitching up a hem, darning a hole in a uniform, patching a tire, repairing the things in need of repair. Someone is trying to make music somewhere with a pair of wooden spoons on an oil drum, with cello, boombox, harmonica, voice. A woman and her son wait for the bus. A farmer considers the changing sky. A teacher says, take out your pencils, begin. We encounter each other in words, words spiny or smooth, whispered or declaimed, words to consider, reconsider. We cross dirt roads and highways that mark the will of someone and then others who said, I need to see what's on the other side. I know there's something better down the road. We need to find a place where we are safe. We walk into that which we cannot yet see. Say it plain, that many have died for this day. Sing the names of the dead who brought us here, who laid the train tracks, raised the bridges, picked the cotton and the lettuce, built brick by brick the glittering edifices they would then keep clean and work inside of. Praise song for struggle. Praise song for the day. Praise song for every hand-lettered sign, the figuring it out at kitchen tables. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself. Others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national. Love that casts a widening pool of light. Love with no need to preempt grievance. In today's sharp sparkle, this winter air, anything can be made, any sentence begun. On the brink, on the brim, on the cusp. Praise song for walking forward in that light.
You are muted, Elaine. You're muted, Elaine.
Yeah, I just clicked unmute and it didn't unmute.
Oh,
But
we can
now the third click worked. My hands are numb. I did split logs today.
my kind of woman.
No wonder. It's like I can barely lift my arm. It's like, wow, that was really, really beautiful.
Wasn't that fabulous?
Yes, and what I noticed right away was it's like Baba's own message of love beyond being qualified in one way or another, just love, everything, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's amazing. That's wonderful.
I remember that poem. I think I had just started writing poetry when Obama was inaugurated. I think I wept off and on the entire day. And I remember weeping solidly during the entire poem because I just thought it hit the nail on the head so perfectly, you know, exactly what you're saying.
Well, that happened to me today.
Me too.
When Amanda was doing her thing, I was just...
Me too.
I was tearing. I just could not believe it. Yeah.
Would you all like to hear it again?
Yes, that one wasn't all that long.
No, it wasn't that long.
However, we're nearly at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I need to duck out actually.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope you did you hear Amanda read her poem today?
I did.
Yeah? What did you think?
Mr. President.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I posted on my Facebook page.
Oh, wonderful. Good.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Diane.
I was just saying bye to Telly.
What?
Telly's leaving, so I was just saying.
Oh, bye, Telly.
He's gone.
He's gone. That was fast. Okay. Screen share. Play.
Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. In the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is.
And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the windswept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Good God. Oh my God.
So good.
Unbelievable.
So good.
I'm crying again.
I know.
You know, she had the influence of hip hop is in there,
Absolutely.
where she's got that rhythm, you know, and she
Absolutely.
just doesn't miss a beat, and she's right on it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
a joyous thing to behold.
Yeah. I've so enjoyed, you know, watching the sequence of the 6 inaugural poets. We did miss one because I saw we were going to run out of time, but you could really see how they were building on each other's poems, that they had listened to each other's poems. Because, you know, I rise, that phrase, I rise, is one of Maya Angelou's most famous poems. And she clearly got that one in there, talking about each part of the quadrant of the country rising. Yeah, I loved it. I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, I saw in all of them, there's this darkness, there's this attention to history, and then there's the hope, the sunrise, however it's shown. There's always the darkness.
Well, yeah.
Recognizing it.
Right. I think it's one of the great things about poetry is that you can, in like the same sentence, you can have the word darkness and light in your mouth. You know, it's what I love so much about Middle Eastern poets, is that they, you know, that whole idea of paradox really informs Middle Eastern poetry for whatever reason. It's really the thing that I love so much about Middle Eastern poetry. And I think Mary Oliver carries that same paradox, because, you know, so often when you hear her poetry, you think she's talking about a black snake or a blue iris, but really she's talking about who you are spiritually, you know, and she somehow combines them without you even knowing she's going there. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Well, this has been a very, did you research all this stuff today, or?
Did.
Wow.
Thank you. That's really
Thank you for that, because it was so appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for being part of it.
My pleasure. I imagine we'll get another many chances, or quite a few chances, to see her read that again, because everyone, I'm sure, was blown away by that.
Yeah. By the way, when I first started to recite poetry, you know, slam poetry was really kind of coming into its own. Slam poetry is kind of her tradition. Slam poetry basically means reciting poetry that you've memorized, that has a lot of intensity to it, usually a lot of anger. So I said to the lead slam poet here in Asheville, I was like, I really want to slam my poetry. And he said, oh no, Tracey, your poetry is not angry enough to slam. But if you talk to African-American poets or Black poets, if you talk to Black poets about where that cadence comes from, they will tell you that it came from church.
Yeah.
From the ministers, Black ministers, you know.
That's right.
Which is just fascinating.
They get on a roll and they start repeating it, and then they feed it to the audience, and the audience echoes it back, and you've got, you know, which is, by the way, very much like the, oh God, I'm losing the name for it. I've known it for all my life. What in the Middle East, what do they call it? Like the Shastri brothers in India.
Oh.
What's the name for that? It's call and response, just like the.
Oh, you mean in Sufism?
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank on it too.
Yeah, you know, the famous Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan.
Part of the zikr. Yeah, what is
it's
Qawwali.
Qawwali singer. The Qawwali, the whole Qawwali is exactly.
Oh my God, I love Qawwali so much.
Did Qawwali call in response? I wasn't aware of that. How did I miss that?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Because it's a community experience.
Yeah, and they achieve in that religious ecstasy. You know, they go out there, and the drumming that goes with it, you know, is also. I've seen the drummers in India. There was a Qawwali group that my ex-husband brought to Mehrabad a couple of times, And he found him in Kuldabad, which is just, not all that far away. And the drummers themselves do call and response. Like there's a lead drummer.
Right.
He'll do a riff and then it's answered.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's doing another thing that's going on. It becomes very complex and it's unbelievably,
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it, like a spontaneous mathematics. The math of it is just like mind frying. It's just,
Yeah.
I love it to death. Just love Koal.
I had the daughter of one of the top Iranian Sufi drummers come stay with me twice. That she was coming in for the Asheville Drum Festival. And she was such a special person. She lives in Canada. She doesn't live in Iran anymore. And I think I perform several times a year. I think of all the performances I've ever done, next to the time I performed with Daniel Ladinsky to 200 people, my favorite was when I performed with her. People were blown away by her. She was unbelievable. And they're not doing the festival this year because of COVID, but when she comes back, I'll let you all know, because she is
I would love that.
special. She is so special.
Yeah.
And it's called a daf. The drum that they use in Quali is called daf.
I love
It's a beautiful hand drum, and it's got chain mail on it, and so they shake the drum to have the chain mail hitting the drum while they're beating it.
It's like a mammoth tambourine. Yes. Yeah, because it's really like a tambourine because it's stuck inside the There's a guy who inside the wooden, I think it's wooden
ring.
There's a man who a few times came to morning arty, and quite a few times, and he played it, and it's this huge thing. It was amazing to watch him, and once I understood that it was like a gigantic tambourine, to start to listen for what he was doing. Totally fascinating. So many rhythms and tones because of where you tap the drum, and then the different rhythms, and
then that metal moving.
And the way he does that, whether he adds it or doesn't add it, and everything.
Yeah,
that's an Iranian old Persian instrument. There was at one time, in fact, the last time I was in, the last couple of years that I was able to be there in India, the Iranian community was coming in great numbers, and they were buying up and renting, the little apartments that are around, those up on the hill, and now I hear that they've kind of backed off. But that's just hearsay. I don't know. But I was there when their presence was very big, and they had several people with dafs up there, morning arty and evening arty.
What time? What year was that?
That was 09. 08, 07, 08, and 09.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was at the center, there were a lot of Iranian people there, and I said, "How is it that you are allowed to come?" And they said, "Oh, because Mir Baba's technically a Sufi. That's how we're allowed to come here." Yeah.
Well, you mean the center here in America?
Yeah.
Well, they probably live in California anyway.
No, they came over from Iran.
Oh, wow.
I was chatting with them, so interested in how they got here and how they got out of the country, and all the things they had to do to get here, and that was how they got here. Coming to the center. They were coming to the retreat center of a Sufi master. That was where they were allowed out. I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
What year was that?
It was about the same time. That's why I was asking you what year it was. It was about, roughly 10 years ago, around that time, that I noticed just this beautiful flurry of fabulous Iranian people who were just lovely.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'll try to get a recording of a daf drummer for next week that we can open with.
Oh, yay!
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That would be super. Wouldn't that be fun, Diana?
Definitely. It's an amazing instrument. And to see that people will sing and just accompany themselves on the daf, it's quite something.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you being
Thank
part of
you.
this. I love it.
And thank
Love
you
it.
for putting it together. I think it was so
Good.
creative of you.
Yeah, it's so appropriate for the day. It's nice
Yeah,
to
right?
wrap it up.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Well, just keep repeating Baba's name.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Mayor Baba, Mayor Baba, Mayor Baba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful week.
Yeah.
You too.
Wonderful week.
Mayor Baba.
Mayor Papa.
Hmm.